March the 12th, 1967. A valley deep inside Quang Tri Province, South Vietnam. The jungle is still dripping from last night's rain when Alpha Company 1st Battalion 5th Marines pushes through the undergrowth. The air is thick enough to chew, buzzing with heat and insects. Every bootfall sinks into mud that smells of rot and cordite. Corporal James Hawk. Hawkins raises a clenched fist, bringing the column to a halt. You can almost hear his pulse over the drone of cicadas. Something feels wrong, an instinct sharpened by months of patrols. Ahead, the trail narrows into a natural tunnel of bamboo, dark and unmoving. Lieutenant Ramirez whispers, "Hawk, you see something." Hawk doesn't answer. He only crouches, brushing his gloved fingertips across the packed earth. It looks normal, too normal. Even the jungle seems to be holding its breath. A Marine behind you mutters, "Christ, I hate these choke points." Every man knows why. Rumors have been swirling for weeks the Viet Cong had begun using new traps, cruel silent things that swallowed men whole. Punji pits, villagers called them. Foot-long spikes, bamboo or metal buried in the ground, sharpened to a needlepoint, often smeared with filth to ensure infection. Hawk inches forward, eyes scanning the dirt for the telltale signs: a seam in the soil, a shift in color, a leaf that lies too flat. Nothing. Ramirez signals to advance. The first fire team steps forward, 5 silhouettes moving in slow, deliberate rhythm, rifles tight to their shoulders. The jungle muffles every sound except their breathing. Then a cracking whisper. Private Langley takes a single step, and the earth collapses beneath his boot. He doesn't even have time to scream. His body drops straight down as if swallowed, bamboo cover snapping like brittle bones. A wet, muffled thud rises from below. "Punji pit," someone shouts. The platoon scrambles back as Ramirez and Hawk rush to the hole's edge. Inside, Langley is impaled on a lattice of upward-facing spikes, some piercing flesh, others ripping deep gouges across his legs and torso. Blood pools instantly across the polished bamboo. Langley wheezes through clenched teeth, his helmet askew, trying not to move. Any shift could drive the spikes deeper. But even worse is the realization. The pit is fresh, hidden, perfectly placed. And now every Marine is wondering the same thing. How many more lie waiting under their next step? Ramirez signals the radio man. Havoc 2-1. This is Reaper. 1-2. We've hit a trap. 1 casualty extraction required. And, be advised, the area's hot with VC engineering. The radio man's reply crackles through the static, distant and distorted, as if the jungle itself is swallowing the signal. Copy that, Reaper. Hold position. Reinforcements en route. But holding position in a place like this feels like waiting for the earth itself to bite. Hawk moves to secure the perimeter, scanning for movement in the trees. The Viet Cong rarely planted a single trap. There were always layers, like the jungle was their minefield, their territory, their invisible weapon. You can almost feel eyes watching from somewhere beyond the green curtain. As the Marines work to free Langley without twisting the spikes further into his body, a new thought spreads among the men, unspoken but heavy. If the VC buried 1 Punji pit here, what else have they hidden? The medics work fast, hands steady, despite the tension gripping every man in the clearing. Langley's blood mixes with the mud as they brace him, cutting away fabric to free him from the cruel spikes without tearing more flesh. His gasps are shallow, panicked. Every now and then he whispers, "Don't let me fall. Don't let me fall again." But Hawk's attention is fixed on the trail ahead. The bamboo corridor seems to pulse with shadows, as if something deeper inside is breathing. He inches forward, scanning the canopy overhead. Ramirez moves beside him, whispering, "Watch the trees. They've been dropping traps, weighted logs, nails, God knows what else." The humid air clings to their skin. Leaves drip water like the jungle is sweating with them. A distant rustle breaks the silence. Hawk freezes. Then he hears it again, louder this time, wood grinding against wood. His voice drops to a harsh whisper. Everyone back, now. The Marines retreat from the narrow bamboo tunnel, weapons raised. The undergrowth quivers. Something shifts within the shadows above the trail. Hawk looks upward, eyes narrowing. At first it seems like just another tangle of vines. Then the shape moves. Two heavy logs wrapped in vines and studded with sharpened stakes swing downward from opposite sides of the corridor, accelerating fast. A rolling spike trap triggered by a nearly invisible tripwire stretched across the trail. The logs rotate as they fall, spikes glinting between leaves. A Marine shouts a warning, pushing another man aside. The trap slams into a tree trunk with a sickening crunch, spikes burying themselves deep into the bark. The force rattles the ground beneath their boots. If they'd been 5 seconds slower, the logs would have crushed them, skewering flesh and bone. Ramirez breathes out sweat carving trails down his dusty face. Jesus, they're layering traps like a damn gauntlet. Hawk steps closer to inspect the device. The craftsmanship is unmistakable, VC engineering built from simple materials but deadly precise. Bamboo stakes, hand-forged nails, rope, woven from jungle fibers, all balanced to kill silently. One Marine mutters, "How the hell do they even build these without making noise?" The answer is obvious, though no one says it aloud. They weren't far. They were watching, listening, waiting for fear to do its work. As the squad regroups, a low rumble echoes from deeper in the valley. Not thunder, not artillery, something closer. The trees sway, shedding droplets of condensation. Hawk signals the men to form up. We move slow, eyes everywhere. This trail isn't meant to guide us, it's meant to drown us. The corpsman finally calls out Langley's stable enough for evac. He's lucky, missed anything vital by inches. Lucky. In this jungle, survival feels like a coin flip. Ramirez orders 2 men to set up a landing zone marker despite the thick canopy, though they know it'll take time for a chopper to punch through. Until then, they must keep moving, find higher ground, and pray the VC haven't turned the next patch of earth into another hidden grave. The column steps forward again, nerves tight, rifles high. Every vine looks like a tripwire, every patch of grass a disguised pit. Every rustle a hand pulling a trigger. Hawk leads them toward the ridgeline, unaware that the next trap waiting for them is far more elaborate than a pit or swinging log. This one is designed to catch entire squads, not just unlucky stragglers. And it's waiting just 50 yards ahead. The trail bends left around a moss-covered boulder, narrowing until the Marines must pass single file. Hawk raises a hand again, signaling caution. Something feels different here. The jungle is too quiet, as if its breath is caught in its throat. Ahead, Sergeant McLean kneels to inspect a thin vine crossing the ground. He tests it with the tip of his bayonet. Nothing moves, no tension, no counterweight, just a harmless creeper. Still, Hawk's gut knots tighter. Ramirez whispers, "Talk to me, Hawk." It's clean, Hawk replies, but it's not right. They always pair traps, there's always a second sting. The squad edges forward. McLean steps carefully over the vine, then the next 2 Marines do the same. But it's the 4th man, Private Ellis, whose boot shifts a patch of moss near the rock. A soft click, barely audible, barely real. Then the earth drops away beneath him. Ellis vanishes in an instant, swallowed by a collapsing floor of woven grass and mud. A massive drop pit, wider and deeper than the Punji pit that took Langley, reveals itself as the covering snaps inward like a trap door. Inside, rows of sharpened bamboo spikes point upward, arranged in spirals to maximize tearing as the victim falls. Ellis doesn't scream. The impact knocks every breath from him. He lies twisted among the spikes, impaled through the shoulder and thigh, his rifle shattered beneath him. The squad erupts into motion. Hawk and McLean scramble to the pit's edge, dropping to their stomachs to spread weight. 2 others anchor ropes to a nearby tree. The jungle hum returns in a low vibration, almost mocking. Ramirez snarls under his breath. They knew we'd bypass the first trap. They set this one for the overconfident. The pit is deeper than the last, carved out with terrifying precision. Its walls are lined with slick clay to prevent climbing. A second layer of concealed stakes lies halfway down, angled to catch anyone attempting a rescue without ropes. As the Marines begin lowering a rope, a new threat materializes. Movement, above, in the canopy. A faint metallic clink echoes through the branches. Hawk's eyes snap upward. Hidden between the leaves is a log suspended horizontally lashed by vine. But this isn't a rolling trap. This one is fixed with a pivot like a massive battering ram held at the ready. And someone just released its locking pin. Hit the deck, Hawk shouts. The log swings down, hurtling toward the pit with brutal speed. The Marines dive aside as the ram smashes into the pit's rim. Dirt rains down. One Marine is clipped in the shoulder, sending him tumbling. The trap was designed not to kill the rescuers, but to collapse the edges of the pit, sending more victims sliding inside. It nearly succeeds. Ramirez fires upward into the foliage. The others join him, but the jungle swallows the muzzle flashes. A pair of dark-clad shapes flee along the branches, vanishing like phantoms. VC sappers. Watching the entire time, triggering the trap at the perfect moment. Ellis groans below, blood pooling under him. Hawk grips the rope, steadying his voice. "We're getting you out. Hold tight." The men coordinate the extraction with precision, born of desperation. Two Marines keep watch on the canopy, expecting another attack. The others brace themselves as Hawk hooks into the rope and eases down, careful not to slip past the exposed spikes. The smell down here is suffocating blood-wet bamboo and the sour stench of decay from older traps that claimed victims long before today. Ellis trembles, voice thin. "Thought I was done, Hawk." "Not today," Hawk whispers. He frees Ellis from the spikes, lifting him enough for the others to haul them both inch by inch to the surface. Sweat pours from every man as they pull, straining under the combined weight of two Marines and the jungle's pressure pushing against their efforts. Finally, they collapse onto the ground, dragging Ellis clear of the rim. But there's no time to breathe. A distant whistle floats between the trees. A signal, not theirs. Hawk rises slowly, eyes narrowing. The traps weren't meant to kill the entire patrol. They were meant to slow them, bleed them, guide them. Because something else is waiting deeper in the valley. The whistle echoes a second time, drifting through the treetops like a warning carried by the wind. Ramirez stiffens, scanning the dense foliage. The jungle seems to vibrate with anticipation. Hawk grips his rifle tighter. "That wasn't for us," he mutters. "That was for them." The Marines hastily secure Ellis alongside Langley. Both wounded men breathe shallowly, their uniforms soaked through with blood and sweat. The corpsman pushes morphine into Ellis's arm, whispering steady reassurance. Ramirez checks his map, though they all know how useless it is out here. "We're being herded," he says. "These traps aren't random. They're pushing us toward the valley center." And into what McLean mutters. The answer comes slowly as Hawk studies the terrain ahead. A narrow ravine snakes between two ridgelines, forming a natural choke point. Heavy brush covers the ground on either side, too thick to move through without hours of hacking and noise. The path forward is the only path at all. A perfect funnel. Ramirez nods once grimly. They want us to walk straight into whatever they prepared. The squad forms up again. Two Marines support the stretcher carrying Ellis. Others sweep the flanks, eyes and barrels every direction at once. The humid stillness is oppressive, pressing against the skull like fingers. They move. The jungle tightens around them, branches clawing at helmets and flak vests. The ravine walls rise higher, channeling them inward. Every sound boots, squelching metal, clicking echoes unnaturally loud between the moss-covered slopes. Halfway through the gap, Hawk kneels. Fresh tracks, small footprints, lightweight. Viet Cong, probably sappers. The impressions lead forward, then disappear abruptly near a cluster of ferns. Hawk brushes the soil, revealing a circle of disturbed earth. A hidden mechanism. His spine turns cold. "Stop, nobody moves." The squad freezes in place. Hawk's eyes sweep upward. Vines crisscross overhead, arranged deliberately. Some loop through pulley-like branches. Others hang low enough for a man to brush them without noticing. It's a net, a trap, something massive. He follows one vine across the ravine wall. It disappears into a narrow seam of stone. Another vine stretches parallel to it. Double triggers. The VC set up a weighted jungle snare, large enough to catch several men at once. The payload would be hidden in the treetops, waiting to drop. Ramirez whispers, "Can you disarm it?" Hawk shakes his head. "If I cut one line, the other trips. It's redundant. They back up slowly. Every inch feels like walking on glass. Behind them, the jungle rustles. Not wind, not animals. Voices, low, quick, coordinated. McLean hisses, "We've got movement at our 6." The Marines pivot, forming a defensive arc. Through the leaves, silhouettes flicker lean forms, slipping between trees, black pajamas blending into shadow. The VC aren't trying to ambush them conventionally. They're pushing them toward the snare. One Marine fires a warning burst rounds, shredding a cluster of leaves. The shadows scatter, but not in panic, more like directing cattle. Ramirez curses. "They're corralling us like livestock. Stay sharp." A twig snaps ahead, then another, then silence. The squad edges backward toward the ravine entrance, but the ground shifts underfoot. Hawk sees it too late. The jungle floor isn't solid. It's been weakened, cut through and supported by thin branches beneath the leaf litter. "A collapse field," he shouts, "back." But the earth gives way under two Marines. They plunge into a shallow pit laced with barbed bamboo stakes angled horizontally, designed to shred legs and arms as they fall. Screams rip through the ravine. Automatic fire erupts from the tree line behind them. Not heavy fire, short, controlled bursts, just enough to scatter them, closer to the snare. Hawk drags one of the fallen men clear, ignoring the blood spraying across his vest. A bullet snaps past his ear. The jungle erupts with movement as the VC maneuver along the flanks. Ramirez yells, "They want us under that net. Move left, break the funnel." The squad muscles through thick brush, tearing at vines, forcing a path through the wall of green. Every step away from the ravine feels like a victory, but ahead lies another danger. The brush thins suddenly. Hawk emerges into a clearing and stops dead. Another trap, bigger, worse. A massive rolling cage of bamboo spikes perched on a ridge held back by a vine thicker than a wrist, designed to crash downslope like a spiked boulder. The VC whistle sounds again, and this time it's coming from the direction of the ridge. The whistle cuts sharply through the clearing, snapping every Marine's nerves like overstressed wire. Hawk whirls toward the ridge just in time to see the jungle shift. Leaves tremble. A vine twitches. Then the entire hillside seems to lurch. The massive bamboo cage, 8 feet tall, tightly woven, its outer frame studded with metal, and bamboo spikes, is released from its perch. Gravity takes over. It drops forward, gathering speed instantly. Down the slope move, Ramirez roars. The Marines scatter, dragging their wounded, stumbling through brush as the rolling trap barrels toward them. The sound is monstrous. The grinding roar of wood smashing against roots, the snapping of saplings, the whistling hiss of spikes cutting air. Hawk shoves a Marine aside just as the cage tears past, missing him by inches. The force of its passage rips branches from trees and kicks up a spray of soil and leaves. It slams into the ravine floor with such violence the earth shudders beneath their boots. The cage ricochets, bouncing once, then smashing into a boulder. The impact splinters bamboo and sends shards flying like knives. One fragment slices across McLean's cheek, leaving a burning red line. Ramirez breathes, hard eyes scanning the ridge. They built that thing to wipe out a whole squad. They almost did, Hawk mutters. But the danger isn't over. From the ridge where the trap was released, more shapes appear, quick silhouettes slipping between tree trunks. Viet Cong fighters' rifles raised, flanking downward like wolves closing in on wounded prey. Gunfire erupts. The Marines hit the dirt, returning fire. Smoke from muzzle flashes hangs low beneath the canopy. The crack of AK-47s echoes off the ravine walls, mingling with the bark of M16s in a deafening exchange. The squad is outnumbered, pinned by fire from two directions, ridge above, ravine behind. Hawk crawls to cover behind a fallen tree, checking on the wounded. Langley is semi-conscious, bloodied but alive. Ellis grips Hawk's arm weakly, whispering, Don't let them drop another cage." "I won't," Hawk promises, though he has no idea if he can keep that vow. Ramirez signals 2 fire teams to lay suppressive fire at the ridge. Tracer rounds stitch through the leaves, forcing the VC to duck back. The jungle lights with brief flashes as Marines try desperately to carve breathing room. But then the foliage to their right rustles again. Hawk spins ready to fire, only to see another contraption buried halfway in the soil. A spike mat, hinged and camouflaged, triggered by the weight of men scrambling under fire. If they had rushed that direction, the mat would have snapped upward like a jaw impaling them from below. They trapped every exit, Hawk growls. Ramirez's voice cuts through the chaos. Break southwest. That slope's too steep to plant pits or mats. Move while we've got fire superiority. The Marines pivot, firing in coordinated bursts as they retreat toward the slope. The incline is brutal dense with roots slick from recent rain, but it's their only chance. AK rounds stitch patterns in the earth around their boots. One Marine cries out as a bullet grazes his arm. Another trips, tumbling partway down the slope before catching himself. Hawk grabs the stretcher with Ellis and Langley alongside two others. Their boots slide on mud, but they push upward with raw survival instinct. Behind them, the VC fighters advance cautiously, mindful of their own traps. A few try to flank higher along the ridge, but Marine fire forces them into cover. The slope crests suddenly into a narrow plateau overlooking a deeper part of the valley. The air here is slightly cooler, the trees thin. For the first time in what feels like hours, the Marines can breathe. Ramirez gathers the squad voice low but steady. Air evac is 20 minutes out. We hold here. No more moving blind. We dig in and make this position defensible. Hawk nods, scanning the surrounding trees. But something isn't right. Too many broken branches, too much disturbed soil, a faint metallic scent on the air. Then he sees it partially buried beneath ferns. A line of stakes, arranged in an arc, all pointing inward. Ramirez kneels beside him, face tightening as realization sinks in. This isn't safe ground, Hawk says. It's a perimeter, Ramirez whispers back. A killing circle. The jungle around them is wired, trapped and primed. And the VC are closing in. Hawk's breath freezes in his chest. The plateau isn't a safe zone. It's engineered, crafted with the same patience and deadly artistry the VC used for every trap they'd encountered since morning. The stakes form a circular boundary nearly invisible until you're right on top of them. Each one angled inward, each one placed to maim anyone trying to break out. A perfect enclosure, a place to die. Ramirez's jaw tightens. Everyone hold position. Eyes up. No one steps past those stakes. The Marines form a hasty perimeter, rifles sweeping in every direction. The clearing they occupy is barely 20 feet across, ringed by brush and shallow pits masked with ferns. The traps here aren't meant to funnel. They're meant to imprison. McLean mutters, feels like they built this whole damn valley just to kill us. Hawk crouches beside Langley and Ellis, checking their pulses. Both are pale, trembling. The corpsman leans close, whispering, "They can hold 20 minutes? Maybe, but we need that bird." As if summoned by desperation, the radio crackles. Reaper 1-2. This is Havoc 2-1. LZ too hot. Need a new coordinate. Say again. Need a new LZ. Ramirez squeezes his eyes shut. There is no alternate. We're boxed in. Hawk takes the handset. Negative Havoc. We're trapped in a fortified zone. VC on all sides. We hold here. Bring your bird in hot. There's a long pause. Then, copy that, Reaper. Bird inbound. 5 mics. Brace for contact. The clearing grows quieter, too quiet. Then the jungle exhales. A rustle to the north. A whisper to the south. Low voices, almost gentle. The VC are closing the circle. Hawk gestures silently. The Marines kneel, rifles aimed outward, trigger fingers steady. Every sense sharpens until the world narrows into a ring of rifles and breathing. Then movement everywhere at once. Figures burst from the undergrowth, sprinting low. Shadows flicker between trees. Gunfire erupts, muzzle flashes strobing the clearing's edge. The Marines return fire with controlled bursts, holding their line as the VC test the perimeter. A grenade arcs overhead, landing near the stakes. Hawk dives, grabbing it and flinging it back toward the brush. A muffled boom shakes the ground, showering leaves over the clearing. Ramirez shouts, "Hold your fire." They're probing. Don't waste rounds. The VC fall back, momentarily resetting positions. Hawk can hear whispering beyond the tree line. Planning, coordinating. Then the real assault begins. A wave of shadows surges from the east, firing as they advance. Another wave pushes from the west. Bullets rip into trees, bark exploding in jagged bursts. A Marine near the perimeter cries out, falling back with a leg wound. McLean drags him to cover as Hawk and another Marine lay suppressive fire bullets, stitching the advancing shapes. Bodies drop. Others replace them instantly, moving with terrifying fluidity. The VC know the traps. They know the perimeter. They know exactly how to approach without tripping their own devices. The Marines know none of it. The firefight becomes a desperate, furious struggle. Every Marine fights as if holding back the jungle itself. Smoke fills the clearing. The metallic thunder of M16 fire merges with the harsh rip of AK bursts. Above the chaos, Hawk hears something, a distant chopping. Rhythmic, growing louder. The helicopter. Ramirez shouts over the gunfire. Smoke out. Mark the LZ. Two Marines pop colored smoke grenades, tossing them toward the center. Blue and red clouds rise between the trees, swirling upward in the rotor wash as the helicopter punches through the canopy like a steel predator. The Huey hovers dangerously low, blades whipping branches into a frenzy. Go get the wounded up, Ramirez orders. Hawk and two others lift Ellis's stretcher, sprinting through gunfire as rounds whiz past their boots. They shove him aboard as the crew chief lays down suppressive fire with the M60. Tracers tear across the treetops. Langley is next, then the wounded Marine from the leg trap. Finally, Ramirez signals for the rest to board. But the VC launch one last push. A sapper charges from the undergrowth detonator, raised intent on blowing the Huey from the sky. Hawk sees him at the last second and fires a single burst. The sapper collapses mid-stride, the charge clattering at his feet. Move, Hawk, the crew chief screams. Hawk leaps into the helicopter as the pilot pulls power, lifting away from the deadly circle. Bullets hammer the belly, branches whip past. The jungle shrinks beneath them as the clearing fades into a swirl of smoke and shadow. Inside the Huey, Ramirez exhales, staring down at the valley. Christ, that whole place. It was a machine. Hawk nods, sweat dripping from his brow. Not a battlefield, not a front line. A hunting ground, engineered from roots and soil to trap men like animals. As the helicopter banks toward friendly territory, the jungle below swallows the clearing once more. Silent, patient, waiting for the next patrol to step into its teeth.